Today is Wednesday, October 22nd, 2014, and Joe Turner and myself, Judy Meyer, are talking with Joe and Nancy Hood. Is that correct?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
How do you pronounce your, or how do you spell your last name?
H-O-O-D.
Just as the way it sounds.
Like the jacket. You got a hood on your jacket.
The hood on your jacket, all right. And I'd like to, I don't really know much about either one of you, so I just would like to ask you where did you start off in your life and when? Joe, would you give us a start on that?
Well, I was born October the 16th of 1942 in Jefferson City, Missouri.
Well, actually, then you just had a birthday.
I did.
Okay, then. So how old are you now, if we may?
72.
Okay, well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
And Nancy, would you mind?
I was born February 27th, 1944, here in St. Louis. I'm just mainly 10 minutes from where I was born.
Really? Where was that?
St. John's area.
Oh, okay.
So we've all been in the county for, well, my whole life. And Joe came here when he was about 12.
1951 we moved down.
So what brought your family to St. Louis, Joe?
Well, my dad had his own auto repair shop in Jeff City, and the economy got pretty bad. So, and his health wasn't really good, so he had to. By 1949, he needed to get out of the business. So he went to work in a couple of shops up there, but there just wasn't enough work to really support, 4 kids and a family. So my aunt, who lived here in St. Louis, her family was part of,
Just on the floor.
anyway, I forget what, anyway, it was the Lambert's family. But anyway, they had a cousin who owned an automobile repair shop here in Normandy. And so anyway, my uncle told my dad, he said, Mr. Godat needs a mechanic.
What was that name?
Godat.
Yeah, where do I know that name from?
Well, probably from a body shop that his nephew owned.
Where was it?
Well, the body shop was on Manchester Road.
No.
I'm thinking of one on Lucas and Hunt in Normandy.
That's it. That's it.
the-
Godat.
And I think they owned a standard station at Broadway and Riverview, which
No.
is the neighborhood where I grew up.
Never did.
No?
But that name I'm familiar with.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Dad came down here, and he worked for Joe. Kind of a test drive type thing, to see whether you want to move your family.
Before the family came down.
Yeah. So he was so impressed with Dad's abilities that he said, if you'll move your family down here, I'll buy you a house.
Wow.
And so,
Wow.
So that's exactly what happened. He bought us a home over in Pagedale, and Mom and I got the house ready and sold it, and Dad stayed here and worked, and we moved down here. By 52, we were the 4 of us, the 4 older of us, were here, and then I was at that time. Then I'd go to work with my dad whenever I could.
Where did you go to school?
I went to school at St. Catherine of Siena,
Where's that?
which was at Ferguson and Page.
It's no longer there.
Okay.
Oh, it's there. It's just a Baptist church now.
Well, I mean, it's
there.
not St. Catherine's anymore.
Yeah.
And then Mercy High School in Pennsylvania.
Then I graduated from Mercy High.
I see. Now you said there were 4 of you?
There was 4 of us to start with, and then it wound up being 8 altogether.
Oh,
I'm the oldest of 8.
Oh, I
Mom
see.
had 4 more kids after we moved here.
Wow. I see. Where did you live in Pagedale?
Well, we lived at 1543 Ferris Avenue, which was just off of, if you remember much about Page Avenue there in that area, Pagedale area, there was a paint company there called Reardon Paint Company. And anyway, that Ferris Avenue was right across the street from there.
My husband was on Ingleholm.
Oh, okay.
And I worked at Ontario Discount Store for a
Did
while.
you really? Yeah.
That's the name from the past.
So when you said Pagedale,
Yeah.
I My ears kind of went up on that one. So, when you were going to school, you said that then you helped your father whenever you could in the shop. And what kind of work or what kind of activities did you do to help him? Can you
Well,
kind of identify it for us?
I learned to do brake jobs and things like that on the cars by the time I was 12 years old.
No,
I was,
12.
Yeah, I
Oh
was.
my goodness.
Good Lord is really, really good to me, you know. And as I grew up, by the time I was 9 and 10 years old, I was a pretty good sized boy. I was big enough to throw those 70-pound bales of hay up on the wagon. So and it was
When you were in Jeff City.
Yes, and the Korean War took my mother's brothers from the farm. A 320-acre farm there, and so the youngest brother, my mom's youngest brother, and myself, we worked that farm while those boys were over in Korea. So, but the Lord made me where I could do that. I was big enough and strong enough to do those things. So in the summertime, I'd go back and put up hay and things like that after I got out of school. But otherwise, I would walk from school to work with Dad till he went home. Eventually, by the time I got into high school, why then I was actually going to work at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 4:30. And then I would work until closing, which was 10:30. So
Really?
Dad would
Oh
have
my.
to come back and pick me up. But I learned to do car repair from those mechanics in that shop, and also I went to General Motors training school and stuff like that. I couldn't drive a car, wasn't old enough, but Mom would take me out there to the school and pick me up in the evening when it was done.
Where was
So-
this school?
It was on, it was in Kirkwood at Highway 44 and I guess called Kirkwood Boulevard then. It was Lambert.
So that was kind of a drive for
It was
her
a
to
big
go.
drive. Yeah. She took me there and picked me up.
Were you the only one of your siblings that kind of really caught on and had a talent for this car repair and all that?
No, quite honestly, there's 5 of us boys and 3 girls, and all 5 of us have been involved in automobile business of some kind. For instance, my brother Jim, who's 5 years younger than I am, was director of transportation for the DeSoto School District,
Wow.
and he was also a body man for Cribbs Ford for quite a while. And then he got out of work there. Well, then I put him to work in our shop. And in fact, at one point, my father and all 4 of my brothers and myself were all working together here in Bridgeton.
Really?
It was called the Bridgeton Garage at that time.
Should have been called the Hood family.
Well, it was called Hood's Bridgeton Garage, and that was the old building across the street from Branicki's next to Gertrude Lucas's house.
Where
That,
Walgreens is now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So was that where the fire engine was stored when they had the volunteer fire department?
The volunteer fire department, the Robertson Fire Department volunteer was stored at McKelvey and Natural Bridge there.
Okay.
In that Standard Oil station there. They were stored there. The volunteer fire department for Pattonville was right there. We're in that firehouse now that's across from the city garage.
The one that says number 1 on it.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was there. That was volunteer. And that building, see, Branicki's burned in 76. And we burned in 78.
What do you mean we burned?
The
What do you mean?
building burned to the ground in 1978.
You mean the one you had just said that you and your
Right.
father and your
Yep.
Right.
brothers were all together
We
in?
were all working there together, yeah.
When did that fire occur?
And that fire, May the 26th of 1978.
Do they know maybe what caused it or anything?
Exactly, we know exactly what caused it, yeah. It was the day before Memorial Day weekend, and we were trying to get our work finished. It was about 100 degrees or a little better that day
In May?
in May.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. And I had a Ford station wagon in there, and it was leaking gasoline. And so those gas tanks were in the side of the fenders in the back of the car. So I took the back wheel off of it, and I, because it was so hot, I set fire extinguishers down on the floor, and I had a water hose
As a precaution?
as a precaution. And I had a water hose sitting there running, and a big drip pan. So I took the center fender panel down, and when I did, the gas gauge fell out of the gas tank. The lock ring that held it in place had somehow either wasn't never secured in there, but the whole thing fell out of there when it did. Well, then there's a 4-inch hole pouring gasoline out on the ground. Well, once it ran that pan over, the water floated that gasoline about 15 or 18 feet from where I was at was a natural gas water heater.
Oh,
And that set that gas on fire
whoa.
on that water.
Well, that building,
Came up. That building was built in 1918. It was the first Ford garage.
1918.
It was the first Ford garage in St. Louis County.
it was brick, but all the pilings or whatever you
All
call it
the-
going up, and the wood and all that was so saturated because it always been a repair
It had
shop.
been on fire once before too, but
And
but
so,
it,
when the fire hit the wood, it just
12
spread
minutes it
like
was
no
gone.
business.
Wow. Was anyone hurt or injured?
no one was hurt.
No.
We all
They
got out
kinda
of there.
chased them out of there because it got in the roof and then it just went forward.
Yeah, it got to the ceiling. Why it beat us to the front door. Charlie Dickman was my bookkeeper, and Charlie had been up in the attic of the garage working on the books, and he had a question to ask me. And he came down the steps and walked up behind me, and then the next thing I hear is, "My God, Joe, you're on fire."
Oh my.
And so I got up and I stepped out of the flames, and I blowed the flames off of myself with an air hose. And of course then we used up our fire extinguishers and the water hose and everything else we could get our hands on to try to knock this fire down. But there was so much gasoline that it wasn't happening. And so finally I told him, I said, "Charlie, we can't, we're not gonna be able to breathe here at any moment, so let's get out." So we got out of there, and like I said, it was 12 minutes later, it was gone.
Well, now, what was next door to you at that time?
Gertrude's house.
Gertrude's house.
And it didn't harm her?
Oh no, it was
Well-
far enough away that it didn't bother her.
I see.
No.
Now, and did we have the Pattonville Volunteer Fire Department at that time?
Well, we had actually, they were beyond they were actually salaried firefighters. by
Okay,
then.
it wasn't volunteer
It wasn't
at that
volunteer
time.
anymore.
Uh-huh.
Not for a very long time. I don't know exactly when that turned the other way, but it was within the few years of when, in fact, when Brannicky Hardware caught fire and burned down, that was not a volunteer fire department at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the fire chief's name then, but I knew all those guys because we worked on their cars. Our shop was right there.
Uh-huh. Let me ask you, what was your first car that you had? That was your car?
A 39 Dodge.
And where did you get it from?
Well, my family had it, and it was getting old, and so I worked and bought it from my mom and dad, and they wound up with a 47 Chevrolet.
So you had to pay them for this.
I paid them for it, yeah.
And how long do you think you had that car?
I didn't have it real long. I was only 15 when I got it, and
Did you drive it?
well, I drove it up and down the driveway. Yeah. I'd already been driving since I was 9 years old.
Oh my
and I
gosh.
drove the farm trucks, because I had to. But I was tall enough to reach the pedals and stuff like that. Yeah, my 8th grade graduation, I was one of the biggest boys in the school.
Wow. So you did graduate from high school.
Mhm.
And here in St. Louis then.
1960,
1960.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to Nancy for a while. Nancy, you said you were born and raised and lived pretty much the whole time here in St. Louis. Where did you go to school?
Well, like with Joe, I went to Mercy High School too. First I went to Presentation there at Brown and just south of the Rock Road.
Was that an all-girls school?
No,
No, okay.
that was mixed. And then, unfortunately, my mother didn't drive, so I was a bus person. Excuse me. So I always got around taking the buses, and as it turned out, Joe's sister Patty was the same grade that I was, and for the first year she went to Mercy as well, and that's how I met Joe.
Is that right?
He was a blind date that, girlfriend's brother.
I see.
So do you remember seeing the streetcars coming back and forth on the Rock Road?
No, I just remember the buses, and you went to the loop there. I
in
think there
Wellston.
was some streetcars that still ran at some different locations that would go to the loop there at, what is the street?
In Wellston.
The Rock Road and
It was Easton
Easton
Avenue,
Avenue.
Yeah.
And because that's how we got around, was we catch the bus and either, well, way back then, you went shopping in Wellston. There was Woolworths and Penny's and a bunch of other stores. And then we would just transfer if we wanted to go downtown. And then the bus would take you from the loop all the way down to whatever the streets were down there that, like Famous was and Sticks
Highway.
was, and they were even farther than Keats Highway. at that
Well, let
point.
me ask you, did you drive when you were what?
No, I didn't drive until I was almost 18, and I only had one brother. So I'm from a very small family. And Joe's from, well, as he said, he's one of 8, but his father was one of 13,
Oh,
and
wow.
his mother was one of 8 or 7. But the Hood family that's actually blood related, there's probably a good 350 or more of
Oh
them,
my goodness.
because everybody back then had big families.
Well, when did you get married then?
We got married in 64. back in-
And so, was this right after you graduated from high school, or?
Me and Joe met when we both were in high school, and we got married. Joe volunteered for the draft. That meant that he told him, go ahead and call me up, I'll go with you. And so he didn't have to wait for the draft. You went in, you were 19, and I would have been 20 and I was 19. And then we got married right after he got out of service.
Where did you serve? What was your military time?
Well, I spent 2 years active duty. I served most of my time, 21 months, in what's called temporary duty. And I actually ran the irrigation and mechanical end of the repairs on 5 4,000 acre farms.
Where's that? Well, where was that located?
4 of the farms were in California and one of them was in Colorado.
Why do you call them?
They were farms. I was a special ops unit, and we were actually, I can tell you now because the 20 years is over. But
You think it's okay now to?
we were undercover mostly. I mean, we didn't wear any uniforms or
Yeah,
anything.
you're supposed to be a
No one knew
civilian.
we were military or anything, and we worked some with the Arthur Chemical Company and the United States Chemical Corps portion of the Army. There was 90 of us that were engineers that were attached to the Chemical Corps, and we grew this wheat.
Wheat.
Mm-hmm.
Wheat.
And then we would disease it with rust, and then collect the rust and refine it. And the idea was it would be a defoliant that we could use in Vietnam. Basically, is what it boiled down to. That would
Was
be-
this the front runner of Agent Orange?
Oh no, this stuff is not dangerous like Agent Orange. This was strictly a plant rust, which we see here in Missouri all the time. You know, that's one of the reasons why I was picked for that, was because of my knowledge of farming and stuff like that, and also mechanical.
Technically, he was stationed at the Rocky Mountain Arsenal in Denver, Colorado.
Yeah.
Because anybody that would ask, that's where he was in service
Well, all my
at.
mail and everything.
Nobody was supposed
you know,
to
my
know he
family
was in
didn't know where I
California.
was at. But this rust, it basically just sterilizes the plant. So you'll have big, beautiful straw and wheat, but there's no fruit.
Oh, it's interesting. It's interesting.
But
Now,
if you put that on a rice paddy, the rice would grow, but when it came time to mature, there was no rice,
oh,
just the stalks.
oh. And did they use this product
Well,
then?
they did. Hmm.
I
It
see.
could be applied with small aircraft. They would use little Cessnas, Piper Cubs.
And when were you finished in the military then?
I got out of the active duty military. I got out in November of 1964. we got married 6 months before I got out. She came out to California with me, and then we came back here, and then I spent, oh gosh,
10 years.
yeah, almost 10 years in the reserves.
Okay.
Because he
Where-
joined the group and they disbanded. And so all the
I
time
didn't
that he
join it. I
was
was,
connected
they
to
joined
it,
me.
they didn't count that as time. So he had like 2 or 4 years of active service. Well, that he'd be put in a group, and that would be the end of it. Excuse me. And then they'd have to wait a while.
You had a 6.5 year, you had a 6-year obligation. Everybody did.
Hello?
Joe did.
Yes.
We all did. And then once you got out
You
of
wanna
active
talk to him?
duty, then you would be put into either a reserve
Okay.
group.
Hold on a minute. This for you, it's from the Bridgeton Beauty Center. That's why she asked for you.
Turn that off.
No.
Hello? I can't talk to you now. Not that I know of.
So anyway, we've
I
been
don't
here.
know. I don't know.
We came here in
Right.
'66.
I'm so
And
sorry.
This town has definitely changed
Thank
a
you.
lot since then.
Thank you. Thank you.
We bought this house in
66?
'65. And then
Oh,
there was an
okay.
8 month, it took 'em- there was a hod carriers strike that lasted for 8 months.
Well, define hod carrier for those of us
Bricklayers.
that may not
They were the guys that carried the mortar and the bricks for the bricklayers.
physically carried it.
Physically carried the bricks and the mortar for the
And-
bricklayers.
And there was a union
It
specifically.
was
Right.
union specific, and Mr. Zyken, who built these homes, was very anti-union. None of his people were union, but these fellas, they honored that strike, that walking off of the job. So our house didn't have any brick or anything on the
Right.
front of it, so
Which is the only place there was brick was the front.
we couldn't move in because, well, the water even got in here. They had to redo this whole room here. It had to be totally redone because the water got into the drywall and everything else. But we finally got to move in. And so we've lived here in this house since approximately, I guess, April of '66.
Yeah.
April of '66. And we've added on to it
Have
several
you?
times, yeah.
Yeah.
We put a garage, the garage we built in '71, and then we went in business in 1972 at Banshee Road in Lindbergh,
Where's
That's how
that?
things are always backwards.
gasoline station up there. It was a Kerr-McGee gas
Where the
station.
service, the big stoplights are right there across from the airport when you're going north on Lindbergh,
Okay.
right past the tunnel.
Okay. So you had a place there on Lambert.
Mhm.
And that was near the
Well-
airport terminal,
Right,
Okay.
Well,
the old terminal, yeah,
that
right
used to
across
be
the
on
street.
Lindbergh.
tan brick building.
We built an extra large garage because Joe was doing some little projects here at the house on cars, but we had nothing outside. So we built this extra garage thinking, well, if he's gonna keep that up, you know, we at least have a place inside where he could work on it. And no sooner had we gotten that garage built, then he went into business and didn't have to ever use it anyway.
So, how long were you on Lambert then?
We was there from January the 6th of 1972 until 1975.
So about 3 years.
About 3 years. The gasoline crisis of 1973 pretty well wiped us out.
Oh.
We didn't have we were moving 5,000 gallons of gas a day out of that gas station, and whenever the gasoline crisis came in 1973, the gas stations all had allocations, and that gas station had a 48,000 gallon allocation. Well, when you're pumping 5,000 gallons a day, it didn't last. You know, we were doing $2 a car, trying to ration it and trying to keep our customers is
Well,
what
the
we was
lights
trying to do.
was
And,
still there, that's there now, and so you got a lot of people coming out of McDonnell Douglas, so that was an easy way for them to, you know, just pull out of from the complex to get their gas.
Well, we gave excellent service, so I mean, it was easy to build the business up, but, as it turned out, well, my brother Don, that's the chief of police now, he could wait on 3 or 4 cars at a time, and he would clean the headlights, the windshields, the back glass, and fill them up. I mean, he'd jump over the front ends of them and everything else. The kid was unbelievable, and people just loved him, so it was
It's a
easy.
different time and age we live in now,
Oh, yes.
where when you gas up your car, you gas up your car.
Right. Mhm.
And
Then
you
you-
are referring to at a time when the driver sat in their
Sat
car,
in the
right?
Right. Full service gas, yeah.
And there was no separate price as far as as it evolved. There was one time where you could get full service, but it cost you more. But back then, the price was the same.
So at this place, you could get gas and repairs.
Oh, yeah.
Did you do any towing?
No. But I was watching that old garage across the street from Brannick's up there was just always, ever since I moved into this house, that was on my mind. If that ever gets empty, I want it. And I kept working at it and working at it and working at it. And then ultimately, Weldon Zellner wound up buying that building. And again, I had become friends with Weldon because I worked on his car. You know, he came in to get gas at the place up there on Lambert, and we got to be associated, and so on as that. And
So were you ever in the Bridgeton Kiwanis with Weldon?
I was.
Uh-huh.
Mhm. I
Good
sure
bunch of
was.
guys. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's
We-
one reason we stayed in Bridgeton was with him having his business here. It was so much easier being close by, and then as it expanded past the bridge and going west, Joe says, I'm not fighting that bridge every day with work and all. And so that's when we ended up adding on to the house and that and just staying here
How many children do you have?
for.
4 children.
The oldest girl is married with 2 children, the oldest boy is married with 3 children, then we have a bachelor boy, and then the youngest one that's severely mentally challenged that lives still with us.
Did your children go to private school like you did?
No, they went to Pattonville.
Oh, really?
They went through the whole Pattonville system.
I see.
In fact, the Vantage Credit Union, that's right here on Fifi Road, that was the grade school they first went to.
Oh,
before
okay.
they closed it. And across the street, there used to be a house, which was actually the home for the DeHome family.
The
And
what? The home for what?
DeHome
The home,
was the family that owned the house, and they sold it, and it turned into the city hall. When we first moved here, that converted house was city hall for Bridgeton.
Now this is very interesting, and you know, as many interviews as Joe Turner and I have done, I don't believe we've actually ever precisely located this original city hall you're referring to. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd like you just to repeat this one more time just to make sure this is all clear for any of our viewers. Because like I said, this is new material, I think, that we've heard. So let's start over again. There was a family that had a house on Fifi.
Right. It
Basically
was right
across from
the grade school, and then Wagner Moving Company, the big
Fry
semi,
Wagner.
Fry Wagner, was right next door to them.
And this was
And then-
before Highway 70.
it
No.
was, 50s, no, Highway
70 was
70
there.
was put in 56.
This was the
70
early
was there.
60s,
Okay.
because we would vote there. That's how I knew.
You would vote
Yeah.
there.
Because
That's
the
where we
city hall
voted,
to
yeah.
go vote.
Where the city garage is now,
Right.
that was the
The old
original,
house.
there was like a ranch style 3-bedroom house there.
We have
Yeah.
some pictures of that, I think.
Yeah.
Still pictures.
and it
that was-
belonged
that
to a
was
family name.
By the name of the home,
DEHOG.
DOHOGNE. But the reason we know that
They're
is
our
'cause
neighbors.
They were
just
neighbors.
lived
They-
2 doors from here, the one son does, I should say.
when they,
But that was his house, family home.
that was there, the family grew up there in that house. And then anyway, Art, he moved 2 doors up from us. So he lived here, we lived with him, he passed away here a
They
couple
lived-
months ago.
Well, we're going on 48 years, and he was here when we moved.
Yeah,
Well, when did this house become a city hall?
I don't know the exact year.
Well,
we
I
moved
meant-
here in '66, and it existed then as Bridgeton City Hall.
well, this evolved from Pattonville to Bridgeton. And when, you know, the first police station, and that was up by St. Mary's. And that
On
was
Natural
part
Bridge.
of a naval base there. I don't know how long you've lived here. Joe, you've been here quite a while, haven't you?
Well, I've been around. We've lived out of town for quite a while, but
Well, if you-
I know where St. Mary's was.
okay, well, there were some Quonset huts up there that were left, barracks that were left over from the Navy.
And there was a Naval Reserve unit there.
Right.
We interviewed Bill Southland. Did you mention that you had watched
Yes.
his interview? Okay.
Bill
He
was a very
involved
good
with that.
friend.
Uh-huh.
And so that's where the original police station and City Hall was right there. And then they moved into that house on Fifi Road and bought that piece of property there, which was, I don't know if it was an acre and a half or 2 acres, something like that. But that's,
We have a copy of a booklet that Bridgeton put out
Mhm.
in 1960 called the Bridgeton Progress Report. And it has a picture of that building as the City Hall.
yeah, yeah. It probably has a picture of my old shop in there too.
Could be.
Yeah,
I'd have to look.
yeah, very likely.
And Roy Swantoner's dad, Henry, was listed as the town marshal
Yep.
in that book.
What a neat man he was. He was genuinely a.
Well,
We would get on the streetcar. I had a buddy by the name of Jerry Kettler, and Jerry and I would get on the streetcar in Wellston. And we'd ride that streetcar all the way out to Rock Road here, all the way out to the station Duquette in St. Charles.
you mean right on the other side of the bridge?
Yeah, cross the bridge into the river and then go there. And we'd bet each other who got the most grease drops in their coffee. We'd go in there.
Wait a minute, what?
Go in there and get a cup of coffee and stir the sugar and cream up in there, and then we called it a greasy spoon because the grease off of the silverware would make little grease drops in your coffee. So whoever got the most grease spots in their coffee got a dime.
Oh, what a fun time was that?
Oh, yeah, the kids were not
Yeah.
stuck
Well, it
in
was
that.
pretty interesting. The conductor would get off the streetcar, and he'd take his hook and he'd unhook the brush and he'd go around, hook it on the wire from the other end, and then he'd get on the other end of the streetcar and ride it back to Wellston.
Because they have the turnaround behind the building.
Mhm.
The building's still there.
Yeah,
If you
it
go
is. I
there.
think it is. Yeah.
And you can still see where that turnaround was.
After
turntable.
your place had the fire, sound like it was a devastating fire.
Very.
Then what did you do?
Well, one of the Bridgeton police officers by the name of Michael McCarthy, we had gotten to be good friends with most of the policemen, and at the time I was riding with them on Friday nights.
Why were you doing that?
I just loved it. And my brother Donnie, all he ever talked about, all he ever wanted to do is be a policeman. He worked for us at the garage. He did our bookkeeping and
But he
stuff like
waited
that
till
for
he
us.
was turned 21 and immediately applied
Yeah.
when he turned 21.
So he got hired by Bridgeton, and
It's
he
the only place he's ever
it's the only
worked.
place he's ever worked. But
38 years now or something
yeah,
close to that.
quite a while. But he and I enjoyed it. I mean, I rode with him at night. I was trying to get Chief Crelow to get a reserve police department going. So, but I was never successful at that.
What would that have been, a reserve? What
Just-
would that be?
There would have been just some help at like the 4th of July things and things like that, where he would have some trained auxiliary policemen that could help direct traffic and
I
crowd
see.
control
They
and
would all
things
be
like that.
volunteer.
Oh, I see.
He never would do that. Well, he did have a volunteer police department for about one day.
One day.
They had about one day, they had a head-on collision going to a robbery up on Lambert, and the volunteer policeman that was riding in the car wound up with the battery out of the car in his lap. It almost killed him.
Oh my gosh.
And the bad part about it was nobody thought about workman's comp insurance for that group, and it was very devastating. It was financially devastating to the city, and but I just thought maybe I could help if I did, and I rode with those guys almost every Friday night. And,
Were you ever involved in any kind of anything?
you had family. The only time was Christmas time, and that where there'd be family arguments and things like that. A couple times I got involved in that sort of thing, but for the most part, no, not really. We look for people, and with children, they get lost and things like that.
I
We
see.
do that stuff, but I never did any actual police work. No,
Let's see.
but
You were telling me then that you had met this man, McCarthy, that was a
mhm. Well, he knew
policeman.
the people that had the Texaco gas station there at St. Charles Rock Road and Highway 70. And that Texaco gas station, which is now the Jiffy Lube, was closed. So Mike put me in touch with the guy that was the Texaco representative for this area. And by June the 8th, we had that thing open. And we were back to work. So the fire was there was such a big loss there. We had insurance, but the insurance wouldn't even begin to cover what we still owed on the building and everything else. So it was like $60,000 that we still owed. So we had to get busy and get back to work, and also had to take care of our families. Well, old buildings like that, they don't give you any business disruption or insurance or anything like that. Now today, if you had a catastrophic deal like that, you would have some coverage to be able to keep yourself alive until you got rebuilt. But that business, I could not. It was over 70% destroyed, so I didn't have enough parking places to meet the rules here in Bridgeton, so I could not rebuild it.
Yeah, plus they also tested the bricks and
The bricks were
didn't pass
too
the
bad.
testing as far as, it was just
Yeah.
too old of a building from the beginning.
So we just had to level it and cover it up and put the property up for sale. Gertrude Lucas wound up buying that piece of ground back from us. It had been her dad's. Her dad and Elyard Kuhlman's dad had actually built that garage there, and that was the first Ford garage in St. Louis County. They sold Model Ts there and that. And,
Was that the place where they made the carriages?
they did make some carriages in there, yeah.
Okay, so now we are at a Texaco station on St. Charles Rock Road where there is the Jiffy Lube.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we went back to work in there, and then two-bay gasoline station with a very busy repair shop.
And were all your brothers in the same group of people
Well,
still
they
with
went
you?
on. Don
They had
was
to
then
expand.
working for the city as a policeman, and my brother Jim. Let's see, Jim went to
Trips?
Cribs. Jim went to Cribs Ford Body Shop, and Chuck
He was still in
and
school.
Vince were still in school. They were still going to high school, and Vince probably still in grade school. But
His family is 4 and an 8-year split and then 4.
A two-part
that's why the time-
family.
Right, so that's why the time frame gets strange at times.
so we worked in there, and there was a fella that bought the property behind us back there by the name of Kofelt, Dewey Kofelt Paving Company. And he got to be a pretty good customer, and he said, well, I got a little piece of ground down here. He said, if you'll give me a 5-year lease on it, I'll build you a building. So there's a brown brick building. There's an auto repair shop in there now, but he built in 1980. He built that, and we moved into that. So we had that as a auto repair shop. And then the fella here in Bridgeton that had been doing the towing here by the name of Stone, he wanted to sell the police towing end of that business.
In other words, he wanted to get out of
He
that?
wanted to get out of the police towing. Okay, so I bought that from him.
That was something you had to kind of buy the rights to?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we
So
met
we-
Stones when the big fire happened.
The
That's
big
how-
Fire.
big fire when the garage burned.
I see.
And
See.
I think that was the first time you met.
Yeah, we needed somebody to get the cars out of there after the
Right,
building
because
burned.
one
There
of
were
the, one
several
lift was
cars
way up
inside
in the
there that burned
air, and
up.
the car was on top of for one of the customers.
Was on the lift,
So,
and so,
before they
tear
could
the
go in and
building
tear it all down,
down,
they
those
had
had
to
to
get
be
the cars
removed.
moved.
How many police cars do you think there were in Bridgeton when you bought the rights for this?
How many cars?
Do you know the size of the fleet the Bridgeton police had? Do you have any idea what that might have
There
been?
might have been 30.
Really? How many do you
Yeah,
think they have
they're-
now?
There's 55 now, I think. I don't know how many cars
It was
they
a
have, but
fairly
there's
big
55
department by
police
the time
departments. Pretty good
That
size.
happened.
There's a lot of area to take care of. I mean, we were going all the way to the middle of the Missouri River Bridge. I mean, that was Bridgeton right to the middle, it still is, to what would have been the middle of the Missouri River there. So
Of the Rock Road Bridge.
the
Right.
old Rock Road Bridge,
That was
yeah.
such a nice bridge where, it was fine until you got to the other side of it, and you had that crazy turn that, you went too fast, you were probably gonna be stuck with a big dent in your hood.
Speaking of hood,
Mhm.
there is a building supply store on the
Oh.
Rock Road. Is that any connection, any family connection to
No.
you? Okay, all right. we were-
Ernie Hood was, well, Ernie went to church on Saturday, if you get my drift. He's different, no family relation whatsoever.
Okay, we were just wondering.
We're
Yeah.
Catholic, and he's
They're-
usually a very nice man.
They're over on Natural Bridge down in Armitage.
Well, that
Right.
family sold that business
Oh, they did.
long time ago to a big outfit out of New York. It's a conglomerate now.
I see. Do you still own your garage?
Mhm.
But you're not working there right now?
No, well,
Well,
actually,
actually, our daughter owns it.
yeah, our
Really?
daughter
The kids have
actually.
taken it, or, well, actually, Michelle's kind of the driving force now.
I'm too old.
So
You don't do that kind of work when you're 72 years old.
so you've retired?
Yeah.
Well,
So that's like
Kinda.
across the Rock Road from Earth City, is that right?
Yes. hmm
it's all the way,
It's on
it backs up almost to the ballparks.
Northwest
We're
Industrial
very close.
Court.
You can look out, like we go down to the garage, and we'll just sit out on the outside of the garage. We can watch all the fireworks for the 4th of July because they're just tying up.
We
on
can
the
even hear
garage.
the public address system from there. Matthew can't go there because you can't take him to the bathroom there. You know, the lines going to the toilets and stuff. When he has to go, he has to go.
He waits till the
So
last minute.
you
and
can't-
it's, Mom, I gotta. So
You take
we
him in a
just throw him to the
wheelchair and
shop.
try to get him there. He's going to
Yeah.
wet himself before. So
He
it,
was mobile up until about 8 to 9 years ago. He broke his hip. And
Oh,
he's
no.
never been able to walk on his own for any distance since that happened.
See.
So,
So the Hood garage and business is still actually in the family,
Mhm.
yeah.
and but none of your brothers are involved in it.
my brothers are all spread out. Got 2 of them in Jacksonville, Florida. Has a big, huge repair business down there. And one of them is a paintless dent repair. He does what's called PDR work, or paintless dent repair, which is a very lucrative business if you're really good at it. Why, you know, that's $1,200 a car to take the hail dents out of one.
Oh,
Those are the small indentations that they can pull out without having to go through the whole
Oh,
severe
yes.
body
But
work.
he's,
sure, sure.
But those 2 are down there, and my brother Jim, which, like I said, he's 5 years younger than I am. He ultimately, he was in the towing business with me for a very long time. Probably from about 85 to about 91 or 92. And then he went to work for the DeSoto School District as the Director of Transportation down there. He bought an 80-acre farm down there and got involved, and so he retired from the school district down there as the DeSoto School Director of Transportation for the DeSoto School District. So that just left me and my 2 boys, and then my grandson, Michelle's son, he went to Rankin to get he has a bachelor's degree in auto repair from Rankin, and he works in the business down there. Ultimately, that business will be his.
I see. Well, Nancy, we really didn't get a chance to talk to you too much about After you got married, were you working outside the home?
No, I was just, we had the 4 children, so I was just a homebody.
And they went to the public school system here, the Pattonville school system.
About that time is when they started having trouble, the Catholic Church, with getting nuns, and so many lay people were going into teaching school. It was like, well, I went to school with the nuns, you know, but now that it's just lay people, and of course, it's terrible to say that the schools lost out too because they couldn't get no tax money or anything. So we just put them in Pattonville, and was very pleased with it.
Well, that's good. That's good. Did you, were you active in any of the community things? You said you were involved in Kiwanis.
Oh, yeah, well, I've always, and I've, you know, since Mayor Bowers has been the mayor, I've been involved in one of the committees in the city.
You mean the commissions?
One of the commissions, yeah.
Well, you know, Joe and I are on historical commission. So what commissions have you served on?
Oh, I've been on the personnel commission. I've been on I was chairman of the park board for about 7 years. Let's see, I'm on the design and review board now. Oh, how many have I been on? Personnel. I can't even. Little bit of chemo fog. I can't even think of all of them that
That's
I've
okay.
been
It does
on.
sound like.
But I've tried to be involved in some way, you know, even with the parades and stuff like that. Even back when we didn't have, you know, originally we had the police department had their own party, and then the city employees had a party, and so now it's all combined into one. But I always tried to be involved in some way.
Speaking of parades, does the 4th of July parade come on your street?
No.
No.
2 blocks over.
Oh, okay.
We walk over to Thailand and watch it. It collects up on Benedetta and goes down to Thailand, because that's a straight through street to go to Magella, and then out Magella, heading for Target.
Yeah, we interviewed the Kellys a few weeks ago.
Oh, did you?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, we've been involved. The Historical Commission has had a float in the parade for several years, and it's a lot of fun. And, you know, it's just fun to see all the people that come out and sit there and wave. And
Yeah, well, his tow truck's in it. It's always at the very end, backing up the fire department and everything. Although this past year or two, they've had some of the fire trucks earlier instead of waiting till the very end. At one time, it was always them at the end.
would you like to see Bridgeton as a city get involved in anything else? I mean, have you ever thought of something you would have liked to have seen our city involved in?
No.
Do you think that we've kind of got a nice, well-rounded city here?
There's nowhere else in the county that you could go and get the services for the senior citizens, and the tax rate that we have is incredible. And we always have money left over in the budget at the end of the year.
Yeah, it's very stable.
We have free trash hauling, limb pickup. I don't think there's anything else that could happen that could be any better than it is. We've got a new community center coming, which is going to be very oriented to, again, the senior citizens.
When do you think that's going to happen? Today is October 22nd, 2014. When do you think the new community center will be open to the public?
Well, it'll take a couple years to build.
Really?
I would think. Yeah, I would think it would be probably the early part of 2016 before that thing is up. I think they're getting ready to break ground.
Yes, I think they had an official groundbreaking last week.
Right.
When it was nice and muddy.
That's always the way it works out.
Yes, but they have it kind of blocked off and everything. So we're looking forward to seeing a new community center. I really appreciate you letting us come over and talk to you today. I'm sorry
anytime.
about the interruption, the phone call.
Oh, that's okay. Not to worry.
You just never know when those are going to happen.
Thank you for letting us
Okay.
come in today.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Anytime. You guys are welcome. You got questions or anything? Why?
Okay, thank you.